What if I told you that hidden inside every single cell in your body is a signal, not a metaphor, not a poetic idea about the code of life, an actual, measurable, rhythmic pattern buried in your DNA that some researchers claim lines up almost frequency for frequency with the exact celestial coordinates of one of the oldest star clusters known to human civilization, the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, the cluster that shows up in Greek mythology, in Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, in Mayan calendars, in Japanese folklore, in ancient Egyptian temple alignments, cultures that had zero contact with each other, all pointing at the same seven stars, all treating them as something important, something almost sacred. And now, thousands of years later, a handful of independent researchers say they've found an echo of that same pattern encoded into the rhythm of human genetic sequences. If this is real, and I want to be upfront, we're going to dig into whether it actually is. It would mean your DNA isn't just a biological instruction manual. It might be a message. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to look at your own body completely differently. This is the strangest theory we've covered in a while, because it sits right at the intersection of three things that don't normally get put in the same sentence: genetics, acoustics, and archaeoastronomy. A claim that lives right on the line between absolutely not and wait, what if? Backed by history, competing evidence, and a healthy dose of scientific skepticism. We're talking about the idea of a bio-acoustic signal, a rhythmic, wave-like pattern that some researchers say can be extracted from human DNA, and the claim that when you map that pattern the right way, it mirrors the positional data of the Pleiades star cluster as it would have appeared in prehistoric skies. Sounds insane, right? Let's break it down piece by piece. Before we get to the star part, we need to understand the DNA part, because this is where the theory actually starts. Your DNA is made of four chemical letters: A, T, C, and G, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. These letters pair up and repeat in sequences billions of letters long, and that sequence is essentially the blueprint for everything about you. Now here's the part that's actually true, not fringe at all. Scientists really have experimented with turning DNA into sound. It's called sonification. Researchers assign each of the four DNA letters a different musical note or frequency, and then they basically play the genetic sequence like a song. Some labs have done this with cancer-related genes to help visualize mutations. Musicians have used it to compose experimental music based on real genomes. This part is documented, published, and not controversial at all. But the theory we're covering today takes a much bigger leap. It claims that when certain non-coding regions of DNA, sometimes called junk DNA, though that term is actually outdated in modern biology, are converted into wave patterns. They don't just produce random musical noise. They claim the pattern contains a repeating rhythmic structure, a structure that isn't just aesthetic, a structure that, when translated into a specific mathematical format, starts to resemble coordinate data, positional data, distance and angle information, the kind of information you'd need to describe the location of stars in the sky. That's the leap, and it's a big one, so let's follow it to where it leads. So why the Pleiades specifically? Why not any other star cluster, any other constellation? Because the Pleiades hold a strange, almost universal place in ancient human storytelling. This is a relatively small, tight cluster of stars, roughly 444 light years away, visible to the naked eye as a small smudge of light in the constellation Taurus. To the ancient Greeks, they were the Seven Sisters, daughters of the Titan Atlas, transformed into stars to escape Orion's pursuit. To the Aztec and other Mesoamerican cultures, The Pleiades were tied to their calendar system and to the timing of the new fire ceremony, a ritual that happened once every 52 years, timed to the position of these stars. To Aboriginal Australian cultures, some of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, there are Pleiades-related sky stories that anthropologists believe may be tens of thousands of years old. The Maori, the Japanese with their Subaru, literally named after the cluster. The ancient Egyptians aligning temple structures to its rising. The Sioux, the Cherokee, the Celts, who tied it to Samhain, the origin of Halloween. Different continents, different eras, different languages, same 7 stars, treated as something worth building your entire calendar, your rituals, your architecture around. Mainstream anthropology has a fairly grounded explanation for this, by the way. The Pleiades are one of the most visually distinct objects in the night sky, useful for tracking seasons, and their heliacal rising lines up conveniently with harvest and planting cycles in a lot of ancient farming societies. That's the boring explanation. We'll come back to it. But the theory we're covering today takes it further. It asks, what if the reason so many unconnected ancient cultures fixated on this one cluster wasn't coincidence? What if it's because something about that data, that specific positional relationship between those 7 stars, was already inside us? Encoded, waiting to be recognized. And this is where the researchers behind this theory say they found their smoking gun. According to proponents of this theory, the process works something like this. Step 1. They take specific repeating sequences within human DNA. Again, focusing on regions of the genome that don't directly code for proteins, sometimes called regulatory or non-coding regions, and convert those base pair sequences into sound waves using frequency mapping software. Step 2. Instead of just listening to it as music, they run the resulting waveform through spectral analysis, the same kind of tool audio engineers use to visualize sound as a graph of frequency over time. Step 3, and this is the controversial part, they say that graph, that spectral image, when overlaid onto star charts depicting the Pleiades cluster's positions relative to Earth at certain points in prehistory, produces a startling visual match. Peaks in the frequency data supposedly line up with the relative positions of the 7 main stars in the cluster: Alcyone, Atlas, Electra, Maya, Merope, Taygeta, and Pleione. Some versions of this theory go even further, claiming the encoding isn't static, that it's rhythmic, almost like a pulse, and that the pulse timing corresponds to specific numerical ratios found in the physical distances between those stars, scaled down mathematically. Supporters of the theory frame this as evidence of what they call biological archiving, the idea that at some point in deep prehistory, information was somehow imprinted into the human genetic line, dormant, passed down through every generation since, waiting for a civilization advanced enough in both genetics and acoustics to finally decode it. Some go even further into ancient astronaut territory, suggesting this could be evidence of directed panspermia. The idea that life, or at least genetic information, was deliberately seeded or influenced from somewhere else. Others take a slightly less extraterrestrial angle and frame it more mystically. The idea that human consciousness itself has some kind of resonance link to the cosmos, and DNA is simply the antenna. Either way, the implication is the same. Your genome isn't just a biological program, it might be a recording. Now here's why this theory has staying power, even among people who consider themselves skeptics. It plays on something we already intuitively feel, that there's something strange about how ancient cultures, completely isolated from each other, kept landing on similar mythological structures. Flood myths across dozens of unconnected civilizations, similar star lore, similar numerology. It's one of the most enduring mysteries in comparative mythology. And mainstream researchers still don't have a fully satisfying answer for all of it. It also plays on the very real, very legitimate scientific mystery of non coding DNA. For decades, biologists genuinely didn't know what most of the human genome was even for. It was dismissed as junk for a long time. We now know a lot of it has regulatory functions we're still mapping out. But the fact that mainstream science itself admits there's still a lot we don't fully understand about our own genetic code creates a very real gap. And theories like this one live inside that gap. And there's something undeniably poetic about the idea, isn't there? That looking up at the night sky and looking inward at your own cells might, in some strange way, be the same act. Okay, time for the part of the video where I put my skeptic hat on, because I promised you, at the start I wasn't just going to feed you a story. Here's the thing about frequency mapping and pattern matching. Humans are exceptionally, almost pathologically good at finding patterns, even in random data. It's called apophenia, and it's a well-documented cognitive tendency. If you take almost any long, complex data set, DNA sequences, stock market fluctuations, the digits of PI, and you convert it into a visual or audio pattern, and you have enough flexibility in how you choose your mapping method, your scaling, your starting point, and what counts as a match, you can usually find something that resembles almost anything you're looking for. This is actually a well-known trap in signal analysis, and it's a big reason why claims like this haven't been published in peer-reviewed genetics or astronomy journals, because the methodology matters enormously, and small researcher choices in how data gets mapped can manufacture apparent patterns that aren't really there. There's also no established, peer-reviewed mechanism by which genetic information could encode precise astronomical coordinate data and remain stable across the roughly 300,000-year history of Homo sapiens, especially given how much genetic drift, mutation, and recombination happens across that many generations. DNA sequences aren't static archives, they change. A recording that's been copied and slightly altered trillions of times over hundreds of thousands of years wouldn't reliably preserve fine positional data the way this theory requires. And on the mythology side, the why do so many cultures care about the Pleiades question, the more grounded explanation is honestly still pretty compelling on its own. The cluster is unusually bright and visually distinctive for its size. It's visible from nearly every inhabited latitude on Earth, and its rising and setting cycles line up remarkably well with agricultural seasons in a lot of ancient societies. When something in the sky is both beautiful and useful for survival, of course, multiple unconnected cultures are going to build stories and rituals around it. That's not a mystery that requires an extraterrestrial explanation. It might just be humans independently being humans. So where does that leave us? Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this theory is proven, because it isn't. There's no peer-reviewed study in a genetics or astronomy journal establishing this connection. No major research institution has replicated the claimed pattern match under controlled conditions. As far as rigorous science goes, this lives firmly in speculative territory. But I also think dismissing it instantly, without engaging with why it's compelling, misses the point of why theories like this spread in the first place. We are, all of us, walking around with roughly 3 billion base pairs of information inside every cell of our bodies, and we still don't fully understand what all of it does. We're a species that has looked up at the same 7 stars for tens of thousands of years and felt something we couldn't quite explain. Maybe the real signal here isn't a hidden star map at all. Maybe it's just us, endlessly pattern seeking, endlessly looking for a reason we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. Or maybe there's something we genuinely haven't figured out yet. science has been wrong about impossible things before. So that's the theory. A rhythmic signal hidden in human DNA claimed to mirror the positions of the Pleiades, dismissed by mainstream science, but never fully going away either. Coincidence, pattern matching gone too far, or something mainstream science simply hasn't caught up to yet. Keep looking up and keep looking closer.